Well, hello, everyone. My name is Seth Dellinger, and this is the Embodied Dialogue podcast. And I'm delighted to be joined by Michelle Garner today. And Michelle is one half of the duo known as OG Rose that produces philosophical works, but also creative fiction and poetry. And people who have seen this channel may have seen Daniel Garner, Michelle's wife, and they collaborate together on all these projects. But I'm so happy that Michelle's here on the channel for the first time, and also had the wonderful opportunity to visit with you earlier this year. And so I just felt like, I meet OG Rose on the internet, but then when I go to Lynchburg, Virginia, and I hang out with you guys and your four kids, you're homeschooling, and like the homeschooling and the philosophy are like really interwoven. They're like, these conversations about free will with, kids under the age of 10 that you wouldn't necessarily expect, but it's like, it feels really seamless. And so anyway, there's just a lot there in that experience that I've had already with you. Michelle, you put out a series of, I guess, reflections on the OG Rose channel, which kind of inspired me to invite you. And I'll just name them because I would encourage people who enjoy our conversation today to check them out. But the first one was called Recasting Online. The next one was called Rest Connect. The third one was Symptoms as a Symphony. And the fourth was about creative energy. And so these different reflections kind of took out questions of our embodiment, questions of how we connect with each other, what gives us energy, what drains us energy, and also, kind of, this is why I made a point of it in the introduction, how does this interact with our lives as being, as we are now, online on the internet versus our lives that are, not online, but throughout the day we're connecting to the internet. And, you love to do wordplay. You were just telling me about an older video about scrolling, but also comparing this to the ancient scrolls of different traditions. So that's what I wanted to get into, but I would love to just start by asking you to maybe give whatever feels appropriate to you to sort of introduce your participation in OG Rose. I know that you and Daniel met a long time ago. I believe you have a background in dance as well. Yes. So that's something about OG Rose's philosophy that really strikes me, is that the question of beauty always feels like it's very much in the forefront. And I feel like that question is also there in the way I experienced the two of you and your kids when I was in Lynchburg. So I just love to, have you introduce yourself a bit to people listening, and then we could jump into some of those topics.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Seth. Yeah, I so appreciate you having me on your channel, and love the work that you do. I'm so grateful that our paths crossed and that we had the honor of having you in our home, which was so special. And yeah, thank you again for your kind words. And yeah, I mean, Daniel and I met, it's probably 2008, I want to say. So it's been a while now. If I'm trying to do the math correctly on that. I'm like, yes, that's right. And we met in the library, which is hilarious because, as you know, in our home we have quite a library, and so that was funny and serendipitous, if you will. And yeah, so we really began as OG Rose out of working together on fiction. So I I just had a really strong, I don't know how to put it. It's almost like that out force bigger than you, right? I would call it God. It's like that sense of compelling to believe in and uh, come alongside Daniel in the work of the writing, really. I saw his vision and I thought it was something that was beautiful. Beauty, right, struck me, and I just gave, basically. I mean, it's I don't know how to, I won't give any qualifiers for it, but it's how our story is, where a lot of the reason behind actually coming together in matrimony, right, and being married, was also believing in this vision of the writing and of the creative work, and also believing that our oneness with each other and our family is also part of that creative work. So yeah, OG Rose came from basically coming together in our unifying in that purpose of advancing and working on and tending to the creative writing, the fiction. And so, yeah, we also write a lot of philosophy, and there's a lot of philosophy that undergirths the fiction. And so I think it has been an important season for us to also like in that way have a maturation of our philosophical rigor or yeah, ability to articulate that. But it's funny because it's always started with fiction. It always started with the creative writing, and a lot of people don't even, might not even know that about OG Rose because a lot of our presence on online has been more philosophical,
Right.
which is great. We obviously think that's really important too. So yeah, I hope that gives a little bit more of a background. I mean, I danced for many years, and I'm into visual arts, drawing and painting, but mostly charcoal and ink drawing is something that I love to do and have done more in the past. And yeah, danced for many years since I was a little girl. I was in a studio and did dance a long time and through college. Um, I also, yeah, I've learned to kind of embrace more of improvisation when it comes to dance and music. I did play violin, but I wouldn't say that I thought of myself as like, I'm a musician, However, I do think there's, as you know, musicality to life. And I think learning improvisation, I actually learned that largely through Daniel because we also were part of this. Well, Daniel really was a huge part of running this and establishing it, but it was this creative community in Charlottesville where we would have an open mic once a week every week, and we got together with a lot of artists and all sorts of people. I mean, it's kind of an open door sort of building that had a lot of foot traffic. We had a lot of different types of people, different age ranges, different ethnic backgrounds or religious backgrounds.
Mhm.
But it was this open building that allowed people to come in, use the instruments, come to the open mics, come to the meals that we had before the open mics on Thursdays, and loved that season and learned a lot from that. And yeah, the open door was symbolic of like this kind of openness to having an open disposition toward conversation and all of like conversation with people who don't necessarily agree on maybe fundamental things, but are able to share a meal with each other and talk about ideas together or play music together. So yeah, that was very, very formative for us as well. Like we created the pen name OG Rose on the back steps of this building, this place called Unoya. So that's very, very formative to like OG Rose and our relationship and our the birth of OG Rose. So yeah, I thought I should also bring that up as important. But yeah, I guess I was saying about that because I did learn about improvisation through like piano, singing. I mean, I've always sung. I've sang for church, for years with my twin sister. Like, love singing. Just sang with her. Like we were always like singing something, and somebody would be like, could you stop singing, like one of our classmates, and like no, or whatever, we negotiate with them about how much, okay, we'll finish the song and then we'll stop singing or something. But yeah, Mary Lee's and I, my twin sister and I, love to sing songs and make up songs and things like this. So yeah, but never like formally trained except for violin for a little while. But yeah, dance is a big part of my background. I still love to do improvisation, and I do think improvisation for dance and piano and anything is an important skill in life because a lot of times you will encounter the unexpected and you'll have to figure out on the spot sort of what to do. So it has a lot of application beyond just the arts. But yeah, I think I will wrap it up there
Mhm.
before I give, a whole like life story or something like that. But I so appreciate the invitation to
Yeah.
share. And I hope that kind of fleshes it out a little bit further for you, Seth. One more thing I'll say really quick is that when it comes to the writing, a lot of people will ask, like, what does that mean that you write together? Like it's a difficult question. Are we like sitting side by side with each other writing? How does that work? So we did do that originally when we first started on writing together, working together. But it was we realized that that process was almost like it felt too it's a little bit too reactive. It's like having too many cooks in the kitchen at first, right?
Mhm.
And a lot of times the way that the writing can come about is like I don't know, I'm sure you have a lot of exposure with this and like familiarity, but a lot of times for somebody who's writing a story, you're suddenly like taking hold of something, or sorry, something has taken a hold of you, and you take a hold of it too, respectively, I suppose, as you let it drag you along in this process of like having this story come out of you, and you're like this vessel for it, a channel for it. And so that is, I would say that a lot of the work, not all of it, but a lot of it has that kind of nature in terms of its origins, like a lot of our stories and the novels and things. That's Daniel's experience. So I'm not going to speak too much to that, but that's how it comes about, right? And it's sort of like, well, it's here. The muse has arrived or whatever it is. Now you do the diligent work of like being there for it to be able to be that voice or allow that voice through you. But yeah, it's very interesting. It's a very interesting like phenomenological process. But so that's how a lot of these things like originate. Not all of them, but a lot, or yeah, a majority. Something's taking hold of the writer, aka Daniel, and I see my role as like a co-laborer in that process, because once it's the out, now there's the process of reading it, refining it, asking certain themes. Like if a work is still in progress, then you need to know if what you're doing works so that you can move on to the next, like the subsequent arc of the main story or whatever it is. So in a lot of the works, I think we think about it like pilot, co-pilot. So Daniel is quite like the pilot on many of the works that people know about right now, and I would be almost more like a co-pilot, somebody who's reading intensely. And at the end of it, so that we do that separately, right? He volleys it to me. I read and work. I read and work. I send it back. He reads and work. We go back and forth. We go back and forth. And then the very fine tuning things when it comes to like the cadence of the sentence and like the effect and does it land? Does it do like it? Does it stick the landing? That's when we're together, like side by side, working through like sentences and words, and again the cadence and the syllables. So that's sort of the process. Now there's works for me like poetry, and some of my works that I would be the pilot for, um, and that's also a part of OG Rose as well. But yeah, I just wanted to share a little bit more about that process, because a lot of people ask, what does it mean that you like write together? Um, but yeah, they're very much, would say that like we do both feel a big part in like these stories and are like people. And so we're kind of getting to know them and then hoping to most fully and as well as we can express like their essence to the world through these stories. And the refining process is a big part of that as well, and also refines our relationship, right? Because you have to be very vulnerable to do that work together. So I hope that is helpful, and I know that was a lot, but thank you for letting me share on all of that stuff. Thank you.
Yeah, that was very helpful. And I'm tempted to ask just one follow-up question
Sure.
before jumping into some of the,
Mhm.
the videos you put out, which I already mentioned, because I
Mhm.
feel like what you just shared is actually like I hope people hear it as more than introduction to the guest on the podcast, because really you've already spoken to so many of the themes that
Mhm.
you began to elucidate in these recent these recent offerings that you made on the OG Rose channel. And there's one other thing about OG Rose that I really appreciate, which I heard in your story. And I'll just give a little context first, but I'm a person who, and I think there's many people like me these days, my introduction to philosophy literally came from YouTube. Like it started like a lot of people probably who might pay attention to OG Rose. I heard the Awakening from the Meaning Crisis series by John Vervaeke, and he sort of talks about the state of the world, and there's
Mhm.
that phrase, the meaning crisis, is kind of
Right.
pointing to how a lot of people feel that it's really hard to have a meaningful life at this point.
Mhm.
One of the keys to um, why that might be the case is, as Nietzsche famously said, the idea that God is dead, and a lot of people don't believe in God. So I was raised in a basically atheist household, right?
Mhm.
And my own path, as you know, took me into embodiment practice. And I'm in a place now, Vervaeke would probably call it spiritual, not religious, or something. Like God is a meaningful word to me now,
Mhm.
but I don't identify as Christian or Jewish or any particular faith. But what really happened for me is as I got more in touch with my body and I became
Mhm.
more physically sensitive, and then later I was noticing, oh, the energy of other people, I can feel it
Mhm.
in my body. And then I got
Mhm.
involved in meditation, which
Mhm.
people can think of it as an inner work practice, but it's also
Mhm.
very much a being with the sensations in your body.
Yeah.
This kind of opened me up, um, to the idea that there really is something much larger than me that I'm a
Mhm.
part of. And what I've found, the more confidence I've gained in that idea, because growing up atheist for a long time was like, whoa, are you gonna actually roll with that idea? That's kind of weird, like literally
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
like in my household, religious person and crazy person was kind of synonymous when I was growing up. I mean, it's a little crude, but I mean, it wasn't so far off that. And yet, what I hear often in the works of O.G. Rose is on all kinds of subjects, from doing philosophy to questions of politics or relations between men and women or the artistic creation. It's like, if you can come to that place of a sort of divine connection or connection with God, that's a certain, maybe in the context of what we want to talk about today, among other things, that you could say it's a certain kind of embodiment, right? Because it's either just me and my body and I have to motor myself around, town, or there's this, huge presence that I can connect to. And a lot of what you shared in these recent videos was about, energy, how we get energy, how we use our energy, how we show up. And so back to this idea of the meaning crisis, a lot of people do have a faith, but then it's different than their neighbors. And this is another big concern of O.G. Rose. Like, how can we talk to each other when we all have a different language, especially for something so important as the question of faith? And so what I want to, get to the question here, but with that context, something I really appreciate in O.G. Rose is that I feel that there's a very open invitation, like on the net gatherings that you and Daniel host. Doesn't matter what your religious background is or if you don't have one, and there's this conversation that can flow between different traditions and whatnot. But what I wanted to come back to with you, particularly in your story, is you did say that you do have a faith and that you connected the creation of just artistic creation to God. And so what I really value is having honoring that idea, and yet holding it in such a way that I don't feel that you or Daniel ever imposes it on others. But there's a way that O.G. Rose, I think, has an offering of what happens when you can find, maybe for each person, your own individual way of making that connection, but the value of that connection. So I just wanted to offer that. And if you want, you could, maybe you'll even find your way into talking about some of the recent videos, but that's just one more thing that was right there in, your story of the origins of O.G. Rose and before meeting Daniel as well. So I'd love to offer that to you to just maybe speak to a little bit more.
Yeah, thank you, Seth. That's good. I appreciate you sharing too on your own history and, process when it comes to, feeling into your body and how that, so you might know this because I think I did bring this up at the net, or, oh, I did. Okay. Yeah. My Creative Energies video had to do with The Artist Way, but I'm reading The Artist Way right now by Julia Cameron. And she was talking about a meditation. She's talking about her practice of morning pages being a meditation, and I highly recommend the book. Like, please go get the book. I certainly I wouldn't want to share anything, like in lieu of just go read her book, basically. Please go support her and read her book. But I think it's great to share our experience with texts and with what we're learning, because it also shows the power of a book, just the power of like opening up a book and reading it and being like, whoa, that can literally change your life, if you let it. That's the big part. So she was talking about the morning pages being a form of meditation, and I think that it speaks to kind of something that Daniel and I will talk about in kind of in the early years of our being O.G. Rose, and like sort of defining some of the things that were thematic for us philosophically, were this idea of man is a walking contradiction, or the fabric of reality is irony. Irony is the fabric of reality. That's something that those phrases I remember years ago, that we would kind of talk amongst each other about. And I think you see that here. Like I think you see this here, and what we're talking about with the body or meditation, or taking time to write morning pages, which is essentially just write 3 pages. Don't let yourself think about it too much. Just basically write 3 pages out, and don't let yourself, even if you don't know what to write, just write, I don't know what to write, I don't know what to write, I don't know. Just keep doing that. Just literally get yourself to write for 3 pages, and let yourself write whatever it is, a dream, a fear, you have to do this today, I'm thinking about this, I really have to use the bathroom. I mean, literally just write down everything that comes to mind, that is coming to your mind. And the irony, the guess I link it to the word contradiction and irony, because um, it seems like, so wouldn't that be like self-indulgent? Wouldn't it just be something that is more reifying of the self and alone, right? Like just the self, just the body, right? And yet somehow that withdrawal into the self, like that, you're like, whoa, 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 there's something else here. Right? Like it's like when you suddenly realize that, whoa, there's I'm actually taking the time to listen. Like, and you do such incredible work on listening. I love the way that you illuminate that topic and kind of urge that as a potential for people to utilize listening as an avenue for, yeah, for so much change, wellness, for just becoming more aware. Um, and how easy it is to think like, oh, I know what listening is. What does it mean to listen, right? Like we really have to like get down to what that really looks like, feels like, what are our associations with listening, etc. But basically, yeah, that's wild to me, that this thing that, maybe could be just thought of as reifying an individual's atomized self and just yourself, suddenly shows you that there's some source, like there's some type of source that seems to be there, that you can sense and feel. Um, and so I think with that, it just speaks again to this again sort of irony, and it's a hard one to, I'll be honest, it's a hard one for me to, even in the work that Daniel and I do and have been doing for many years, like I can still feel the tension of, it's self-indulgent, why are you doing this,
Yeah.
what, why are you whatever, why are you like, you're just, that's selfish, right? And yet when you kind of believe those lies, you end up being rather selfish anyway. I mean, it's just because if you don't do the morning pages, let's just say, okay, the morning pages, as Julia Cameron talks about in The Artist Way, she says that it's almost like her getting to the other side. Like you put down on the page the stuff that's occupying your mind so that you can really be free to actually encounter the other, to actually be open. It's like the clearing of Heidegger, right? To actually encounter the other, to actually encounter reality, like what's actually happening. Because otherwise, you're just in this cloud of, I don't know if you can relate to this. I can. It's like this cloud of something that's just, like you just kind of feel like you keep butting up against it and you don't know what, you're like, it's kind of stuckness. And she talks about cultivating the creative practice to unblock, right? To unblock things in your life. And she's talking about it as it relates to writer's block or any of the artistic blocks that some people might relate to, but it's also very much related physically. Like she'll talk a lot about how this is not just it actually can relate and very much link up with physical change. And that's what I was talking about a bit more in the creative energy, because she was talking about spiritual electricity, which I love that term, in her first chapter of that book. And, I think there's a lot of ways in which it's like, oh my gosh, ailments, even physical ailments, may be related to the psychical landscape that is not being attended to, because I do think the mind and body are quite linked, are linked. And so, yeah, I guess all this to say, how is it selfish? Ultimately, to believe it's selfish. It's like this weird self-fulfilling prophecy, and it's really difficult to say like, oh wow, actually maybe getting more in touch with the self is allowing yourself to get to that source, right? Like we're talking about, whether it's God or some idea of the concept of a bigger than yourself, so that you can step out of the way and it's so hard to get this. Like I'll just be honest, it's hard to get this because it's so deeply ingrained that, like, if you're taking time, or it can be, if you're taking time for yourself to do this thing, it's selfish, or you could be doing this, or you should be doing that. And it's like you have to like realize that there's something contradictory where you're taking time for yourself, but it really is for the greater, it's like this larger self, that capital S bigger self that's there, that's like, would you please just look at me, would you please just let me speak, so that we can actually start to uncover all that is around you and in your field that you keep bumping up against and you don't know why you feel so stuck, you know. And so I think there's such a power in, like, even these little yet big realizations. But I just want to say that it does seem I don't know, she kind of speaks about it as like it's kind of inevitable. Like I love her confidence when she talks about this. And she will say too, like, obviously God can have some very positive and very negative connotations for people. But I love the way that she just sort of says she's not making a claim or an assertion about God or God's existence. She's
Right.
saying that if you do certain practices which do require your body, which do require time, which do require something of you, that you will get in touch with something. And that something is quite powerful and has been waiting for you,
Hmm.
essentially. And so yeah, anyway, I think that yeah, it's just it's interesting. And actually Seth, I'm thinking about this idea of the body because I think, and understandably, there can be. I know. I'll just put on the table something I've been thinking about lately that I'm really kind of grappling with is the body as um, how we view the body, and if we should kind of be having this honor and respect for people having different experiences within their body, right? And understanding that for some people there's almost a fear of your body or something like that, and a danger that you might experience towards your body. Um, and kind of being able to respect that and hold the space for thinking about how that relationship to body can be in such a way that we both recognize our capacity for danger and safety, but that we can do do some sort of something that can allow us to kind of get better in line, um like our impulsivity, so that we don't have to be like, oh, we the body is something that we kind of have to just you know
Yeah.
get the rein on, which I understand. Like it's this tension place because there's disciplines and there's practices, and those practices can even be very hard, right? Like I don't know, dipping into a cool stream when it's really cold, or like certain exercises, right? Like it can be quite challenging. So there can be a value in this. And it's just it's wild because today we don't have a lot of the necessity that we used to have regarding the body, or what it would have to be exposed to or not exposed to. So like our stressors for the body, we have to almost like we have to like non-rationally, as we talk about in OG Rose, we have to like make a non-rational choice to expose ourselves to the elements in certain ways or not.
Hmm.
And so I think this gets to be like, yeah, it can feel quite tricky for people to also feel like a validity in doing those things. But yeah, it's that was kind of a nebulous way of articulating what I'm grappling with right now. I need to get better at like articulating like what is my precise question with that. But I think you can get the general sense of it. Um, but yeah, the body, I just bring it up because you're talking about like getting further and deeper into the body. And I think there's something which, like, I'll just be honest, my leaning is that yes, that's good, we should do that.
Hmm.
But for
Hmm.
those who I want to kind of respect where they're like, that could be dangerous for me or others if I do that. If I got more into my body, what if that means I do only my impulsive stuff or only my base desires? And I respect that. I totally understand where that person's coming from. I really do. So could there be a way in which we can approach that, which is inclusive of that person's actual lived experience, and offer options, because I like options. I like people. I think options are great for people to know what's possible, right? And you guys talk about Aspasia, you and Daniel. I love your conversations, and you guys talk about like social imagination and all of this. And I think that like what I'm realizing is how much true power that has when you know that somebody is, oh wow, they like I'm in this kind of community with moms who talk about like doing stuff more outside, right?
Hmm.
Again, in our modern world, you almost have to like make an active choice and make active habits that make you have to go outside, that aren't just like where you're forced like everybody get outside now. Like that's not the right approach either. Like okay, kids, are you better, that wouldn't be the right way, because that you want to make it like a participation and an invitation to be outside.
Hmm.
And kind of I'm going to, and it sets the sort of, not even with your words, you say I'm going to with your body. You don't even say a single thing, you just do it with your body, and it's an invitation for people to come alongside you. And maybe they get cold, maybe they want to go back inside. You, yeah, I'm out here right now, I'm just out here right now. And that being a continued invitation that, oh, maybe I could be outside too, even though it's a little colder than usual. Maybe I'll put my jacket and my hat on and I'll come out and play in the lead, whatever it is. But I mean, this is a very real thing for people today. It really is, because this is related to the internet, and like some of these topics I like to talk about is like it's becoming, we know it, but it's a very, very real thing where the engagement with the land, the feet on the ground, the climbing of the trees, the getting into the creeks, the all of that is like there is no necessity like you have to wash your clothes there anymore. There is no necessity where you have to go get the firewood or go feed the chickens or whatever it is. So it can be, and if you choose to do that because it lines up with your values, then great, and people can definitely make that happen. But otherwise, it's just it's very very yeah, it's very interesting because we don't have, again, we don't have that necessity. So then we have to choose that necessity. And golly, there was something this was all coming from, but oh, the moms group, right, right, right. So then when moms are saying like, I'm folding laundry outside or I'm doing this, that, or the other, you're kind of like, okay, okay. Like, and we actually do I do like to be outside a lot and I do my best to try to make that happen. But it's a reality. It gets colder and you're like,
Right.
it's cold. but
Yeah.
you're like, but I know this is valuable, like I know it's important, so how can I do this in a way that doesn't become this kind of top down totalitarian thing, but it isn't like a, and it's not manipulative either, because you could be just as kind of totalitarian in a manipulative kind of nice way, right? That's not right either. It's just this kind of, what are you doing with your own body to make that an invitation to do
Mhm.
so. But when you see examples of people doing it, then you feel more empowered to be able to do it yourself, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the power of even like a decentralized community online, because you're like, okay, I don't necessarily see a whole bunch of people doing that for whatever reason, right? Maybe they're going off to their institutional things, or they're doing this, they're doing like the kind, which is fine. A lot of that stuff's indoors, right? But again, if people are showing you little blips of this here and there, like little glimmers of what's possible, and they maybe talk about it, they talk about their experiences, they talk about what's hard about it, what's good about it, then you're like, oh, this is a possibility space. When I'm talking about these options, you're like, there's options. There's options.
Right.
So,
Right.
anyways, that was a lot. So, thank you
That
for
was great.
trailing along
Yeah.
with me.
Well, I feel like what I want to say and what
Mm,
I'm getting from some of these pieces you put out recently,
mm,
and maybe we can speak to some more of the specifics, but one
sure.
of the things you said, and I think it was in the video called Rest Connect, where
Yes.
you made a connection between what feels restful
Yes.
and the experience of connecting to other people
Mm,
or connecting to self or connecting to God. But,
yeah.
without going into everything, essentially, the fact that you and I are on a Zoom call, we could say that's connection. But
Mm-hmm.
then the quality of our engagement could be, it could be all kinds of things. We could be sitting
Yeah.
here hurling insults at each other, or we could be, just talking about this is what I did today, or we could be, really in a place of kind of
Mm,
searching to try to
mm,
understand something together, and it could feel like a creative experience. And those would be three different energetic experiences, right?
mm,
Like
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
those different ways of showing up on the Zoom call would also feel different when the Zoom call ended. And I
Oh
say,
yeah.
how am I as a result of that Zoom call?
Mm, mm-hmm,
And one of the points that you made was to use this example, since here we are on Zoom talking. You said, well, when we connect on Zoom, we call that connection, but let's notice that we couldn't connect at all if we didn't first have electricity,
yeah.
then Wi-Fi, and
Mm-hmm,
then we're face
yeah.
to face with the other person. Now, of
Mm-hmm,
course, we can connect to our neighbors in person, but let's just say maybe this was the first human interaction that you or I had today. Let's just say
mm-hmm,
that's how our
mm-hmm.
day was going. I know
Yeah.
you've, with your kids and everything,
Right.
but
Right.
you make a point about, and I love all the wordplay. You say, well,
Mm,
we talk about being online, but do we mean
mm,
connected to the computer, able to check email, or do we mean that my senses are online? Do we mean that
mm-hmm,
I'm present in my body, that I'm
mm-hmm.
aware of the coming and going of my breath? Or,
Yes.
if I do have a belly ache,
Mm,
I'm aware of, oh, something's happening in my belly. Am I hungry, or did I eat
mm-hmm.
something? Did I eat too much? Whatever. But in other words, the first connection would be to the self,
Yeah.
or you also suggested, and when you were talking about the morning pages, maybe a connection to God, or if people prefer the universe or
Sure.
the divine or
The
something like
source.
that.
Right.
But so if I connect to my own body, if
Mm-hmm.
I connect to, I'll just for convenience use the word God, and that feels like all that's quote unquote online, then I plug in my computer, fire it up, and I say, hey, Michelle, good to see you. Like that's a
Mm-hmm.
very different engagement.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I really
Yeah.
appreciated the ordering that you
Mm,
put. Like, and what I want to say is, though, even though you've pointed to, the difference now to, I mean, if we I think it's valid to sort of compare ourselves to the hunter-gatherer humans that were our origin, even though obviously we're a million miles away from that. That is how our bodies were formed. That is how our nervous systems and our brains were formed.
Yeah.
And you've pointed out there isn't a necessity to necessarily leave the house. We don't have to go hunt our food. But what I'm hearing, and maybe this is just to make it a little provocative, I'm actually hearing you say that actually there is a necessity to be connected to myself.
Yeah.
And if we don't say, God, because maybe not everyone listening would appreciate that, but at least connected to my surrounding environment, like situational awareness.
Ecologically, yeah. Yeah.
What I'm hearing is that is a necessity, because if not, I could show up on this Zoom call with you and it's already draining, because I'm not connected to myself, and I'm sort of, or this question that you brought up, and I hear this so often with clients I'm talking to about self-care, and this idea that self-care is self-indulgence, right? And so that's a thing that we could maybe, start talking about. Oh, well, that's just in the culture, this idea that you shouldn't be selfish. And of course, there's other ideas in the culture about there, like, look out for number one, don't, but it's like, I just think that there's a really beautiful clarity if we say, hey, caring for my body and caring for my overall experience of being in the world is a necessity. And it kind of precedes any other engagement I have with another person, with an animal, with a child, as I walk in the woods. And just one last thing I want to just mention, so that maybe you can speak to it a little bit. In your video called Symptoms as Symphony,
yes,
you spoke about the work of Hildegard von Bingen and a doctor named Dr. Homer, I think it was, who's an ontology doctor. But in both cases, you were referring to, like I said, a belly ache or, pain somewhere in my body.
Yeah.
What's going on there? Is it just that, there's a problem that needs to be fixed? Do I just need to get the right pill? Do I need to, get an X-ray and get patched up? Or is that actually a signal that's coming through my body, but maybe coming from beyond? And Hildegard von Bingen had experiences of things coming up in her body, and she related it to her relationship to God. And there was a moment of feeling that she wasn't in right relationship with God, and she was physically ill. And then when she came into right relationship again, she seemed to physically be healed. So I just wanted to gesture to that. But I really, excuse me, I love how in the different videos, I feel like you've made this beautiful connection between relationship to body, relationship to others, relationship to the divine, and the reality that we live in this world that is, so digital at this point, but that these concerns are still very real, and we somehow have to keep them on the front burner, even though maybe there's a lot of ways that our culture would say, oh, that's not important anymore.
Yeah, no, that was great, Seth. It makes me think about, I did say several times, it's not necessary, right? I mean, I will clarify or add, I suppose, that, it is something that I feel to be necessary. Like when I don't go outside, I don't feel as good, or as, like, whenever I feel overwhelmed, I just go outside. I literally go outside and I walk around barefoot and I take a minute to breathe, and I'm like, I should just go outside. When I'm feeling that, I'm like, just go outside. And it helps me so much. It is absolutely necessary. And it's absolutely necessary for us to be connected with the land, with that voice inside that, I talked about, with, you might spill out onto morning pages, with your body. Absolutely, it's necessary. I think that we unfortunately, a lot that is around us tries to and teaches us that it's not necessary, right? It teaches us that it's not necessary. And Daniel will talk about, like, he'll go off onto the hikimorism, right, in Japan and all of that, but like, there is a way in which mechanized society doesn't require you, like, it actually fundamentally is necessary, but we've kind of been trained into thinking that it is no longer necessary. It is no longer necessary because you don't do, you could get DoorDash. I'm not trying to judge that. I'm just saying, you could have stuff just brought to you. You can order everything from from the convenience of your home. You can, but I always think about that, like, I love wordplay. So whenever we think about convenience, we're always trading convening. We will not, we sacrifice convening for convenience. And you'll feel that. You'll feel that. It might, in a sense, be convenient, but you're like, I don't know. Something doesn't, at least I'll say this. I think also you doing more of the practices that sometimes get lumped into self-care, but really are kind of like it's almost like, I do think it's just, it's, hmm, I
Yeah, I
don't know,
almost
maybe
don't love the phrase self-care. It almost diminishes what that
what
practice
that is. It is.
is.
And it's susceptible to being like that. It's susceptible to becoming something that's self-indulgent.
Mhm.
Um,
Right.
but at the same time, it sort of reveals how much unclarity we have, I think, regarding self-care, and also the fact that the self is perpetually in the ecosystem already. It is perpetually a nexus of yourself with your lineage, your ancestors. Like, you're not here because of yourself. You're here because of everyone who came before you. You're here because of many, many reasons, for many,
Mhm.
many other decisions, and decisions you've made and decisions you've not made. And that's why you're here. That's why you are yourself, right?
Mhm.
And so for me, I wonder if we could reframe it as like, I have found these terms kind of helpful in the things I've been like learning from recently, where it's almost like doing this excavation of our own history, an excavation of our own selves. And
Mhm.
it's not really, yeah, I mean, it's care in that you're taking the time to do it, and actually that is ultimately a caring thing to yourself and to others. And if you have that much issue with having care toward yourself, you should probably slow down and sit with that a little bit, because
Mhm.
you if you want to be a caring person, which often the denial of self-care comes from, how are you going to be a caring person to other people if you have not cultivated a way of doing that with yourself, you know um and that's not easy. I'm not saying that's like an easy thing. I think there are a lot of nuances to that, in the sense of like, also care can be associated with just the pleasantries, right? Like comfort, and it's nice and it's easy. No, care can also be doing the hard things, right? Sometimes that's the best way to care for yourself. Like, even to do something, and I'll be honest, it's like sometimes it's like, okay, how do I've been trying to figure out, like, how do I do morning pages? I'm I'm very much quite constantly surrounded with my children, which I'm so grateful for. I love that I get to be with them and they with me. Um, but there's a reality, like having an infant who's still nursing, and he's quite sensitive to if I'm awake, and so it's like, when do I find that time to just write out these 3 pages? Um, but sometimes it does require you to be like he was still sleeping, so I got up, even though it would be like, I just, you want to linger a little longer. It's warm in the bed, but you're like, okay, get up, Michelle, and so it's a self-care looked like getting up, and it's getting colder now where we are, as you know. But so I'm like, okay, I need to get up. I should get up. So it's like you're kind of putting this sort of a necessity on yourself, right? You're putting this imperative on yourself that you're choosing, and it's not always comfortable, but it is ultimately a type of action that is self-care. But there is kind of the myth that you are just tending to yourself, when really you are, again, constantly in a nexus of relations and interactions and fields and your lineage. And so this isn't just about you. It's about,
Yeah.
it's it is about you. We can't be afraid to, like, I think there can be major qualms with even making that claim, if you're like, okay, can you never do something just for yourself, or a stand that you're making? I think you do need to be able to do that. At the same time, I'm just kind of saying that you in a vacuum is never the case. It's never
Yeah.
just about you. It's about you and everybody who knows you. It's about you and everyone who came before you and who's going to come after you. It's about, so yeah, I think that could maybe be helpful too. And so we don't just think of self-care and we think bubble bath or something. Not that there's anything wrong with taking a bubble bath. I'm just saying
Yeah.
that sometimes the tropes and like the stereotypes you get from the social media sphere.
I had the image
Well,
of bubble bath earlier too.
oh
The,
yeah.
the thing that I wanted to actually counterpose, and actually
Mhm.
when I did my training in the Feldenkrais method,
Yeah.
um, they did make reference to, I think it's from the Greek oracle, but this idea of know
Mm.
thyself, right?
Yeah.
And so
Mm.
a
Hmm.
phrase that we might substitute for self-care is something like self-inquiry.
I love
Right?
that. I
Yeah.
love that. Yeah.
And it's like,
Self-inquiry, get curious with yourself.
right. And so again, if we use our Zoom call as the example, it's like, well, I'm about to engage with Michelle,
Yeah.
but like, who am I exactly who's about to engage with you? Maybe I should like take a little time to find out. I mean, I have my narrative about who I am, but am I grumpy this morning? Am I kind of preoccupied with something that, will
Yeah.
take me away? And if I am preoccupied, but I know that I'm preoccupied, that's very different than I don't even realize that I'm so preoccupied and then I
Yes.
show up. I mean, it's not
Yes.
that we want to whisk that away, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I thought maybe this would be useful. I'll just sort of briefly sketch a framework that I use
Yeah.
because I sort of hear it in what you're saying. And then I wanted to, there's a particular thing that I'd love to um, just get more thoughts from you about. But so I often think of four postures, and I call them the four postures of learning. And so, of course, learning could bring up images of school or studying a subject, but I think of learning this very broad way of like learning is the journey from I don't know to I know, something like that. And of course, it's a never ending journey because there's always so much that I don't know. But in the context that you brought up, let's say that I, do wake up in the morning with something going on in my body, some kind of symptom. And it's like, well, what is that? I don't know. And potentially there is a way to work through where if it's an unpleasant symptom, I can get to the other side of it. But do I know how long it's going to take? Is it just a bubble bath? I need to take a bubble bath? Or, is this something that's like that thought that's preoccupying me, but I don't want to think about, but it's like a super serious problem, but I'm avoiding it. And then it's somehow showing up in my body. So, this is a broad thing, but I find that these four postures are really useful for working through things like this. And it can be physical questions, it can be emotional, it can be interpersonal. But the first posture is kindness. And so this kind of relates to this idea that, actually it is okay to pay attention to myself, to see what I need. Or, if I'm with someone else, it is okay to pay attention to them. You and Daniel have been talking about recently assuming the best, which is, I think, very much a part of this. So whether it's me or it's, someone who's mad at me and it's very unpleasant, but if I assume that they're doing their best, even though them being mad at me is unpleasant, it's like, okay, I'm not going to write them off. I'm going to treat them as a human. I'm going to offer that kindness. And then there's, of course, all kinds of reasons that we do the opposite. We're not kind to ourselves. We're not kind to other people. But if I can be kind, right, that puts me in the best position for, we'll just say, learning, because then mistakes don't become like huge setbacks. They potentially become opportunities for insight. Like, oh, you were thinking this and I was thinking that. Oh, wow. Just because I didn't assume your difference of opinion was you being wrong, I offer you that kindness. Then we were more quickly, and we could even think in terms of productivity, getting things done quickly. We could more quickly arrive at a place where we can, move on. And then the next thing, which I think you've been gesturing to as well, is I call it connection, but sometimes I would also say presence or attention. And it's like literally what is going on right now. So if my belly hurts, it might just mean lying in my bed for a few minutes and just paying attention to the pain in my belly and pay attention and pay attention and pay attention, rather than just like, oh, my belly hurts. Where's the medicine I can take? They'll make it. It's like, put your attention on it. And a key thing here is this is the part where if I don't want pain in my belly, it's very what I just said, it's very tempting to not pay attention, to turn away. And so it takes courage to actually turn towards what's unpleasant. This person is yelling at me. The easiest thing is to say they're a jerk. The harder thing is to turn towards them and to really get curious what's actually going on. So curiosity is actually the third posture I talk about. And curiosity is like, in my experience, if you can be present, like if I'm looking at you and then I see the blinds behind you and I see the power outlet and I see the frame, like there's actually more and more information I could get just by really
Mhm.
gazing at you. Oh, your hair is coming down on one side of your
Mhm.
neck. Like all of these details, when I really
Mhm.
see them and notice them, it's like at a certain point I realize, wow, how much more is there that I
Mhm.
haven't noticed? So curiosity can be a more intentional opening.
Mhm.
And if if you were mad at me, but I'm curious, it's like it's also a vulnerability. Like I'm
Absolutely.
willing to feel the anger coming in and like, wow. But when I'm able to feel that, I get,
Mm.
and then let's say there's too much anger coming in. Well, then I remember kindness, like, oh, okay, like this person's been yelling at me for 10 minutes. Like I can't, maybe I need to be kind to myself and like go away for a while. But then if
Yeah.
we can get
Mhm.
through all that, the
Mhm.
final stage, and this is where I think OG Rose often would talk about intrinsic motivation,
Mhm.
would be play. We're
Mhm.
actually
Mhm.
participating. We're actually dancing with the symptom. We're
Mhm.
actually
Mhm.
engaging and improvising. So that's kind of like this four-part framework that I often think about.
Yeah.
But in that video where you were talking about, Hildegard von Bingen, I
Mhm.
really got that sense of like one of the things that you were honing in on is that sense of connection, and am I
Mhm.
even willing to be present with this thing? And
Absolutely.
that's
Mhm.
part of what we were originally calling self-care, but maybe why self-inquiry
Mhm.
um, feels a little better because you also say in one of the videos, sometimes healing hurts.
Mhm.
But the thing is, if I stick with the hurt, I don't run away from it. I
Exactly.
actually might feel better on the other side of it.
Absolutely.
So yeah,
Yeah,
I've
that's great.
given you a lot there, and so now I'll
No, that
now
was
I'll
so
go back
great.
into listening mode.
That was amazing, Seth. Thank you so much for all that you shared. And I love this four postures of learning. I think that's is fantastic. And I was actually listening to a video of yours on kindness. That was really, really powerful. And um, yeah, I just think that there's so much there because I another thing I've kind of been obsessed with lately in terms of thinking through something is like how do we best learn? How do we best learn? And obviously, like we have four young children, so I'm always thinking about like you know I've also there's this kind of tension of like is there a perfect way? I don't know, but there could be a way that is always willing to be perfected, and I do think that is the work of the parent. And as you are teaching, because you're learning too, like it's not just a one-way street, it's certainly a two-way street. You're learning a lot as you teach, but you also are the one who is given the task of teaching. So it is yeah, it's a big deal, and to do know how to do it do it well is like again it's a big deal because again this self-inquiry, I love this reframing of self-care because a lot of times I was thinking about this, I don't know, yesterday, I don't remember when, but I was thinking about like we're called the information age, right? Information age. But I was like, oh my gosh, there's so much information about myself and Daniel or whoever's around me that I literally don't know unless I do self-inquiry, unless I do, hey, can we hold a space to think about this? Or how was this for you? Or I wonder what that getting curious, like you're talking about with learning, like getting curious. Um, that's interesting. And then you're like, oh, that's actually information. This is the information that like we actually need. Like we need it. Like we need this information, and yet we're inundated by so much information that we're not even using often. Sometimes depends. And there's a balance with that because I can't write that off entirely because I have learned some things that have been quite important through the tidal wave of information that is on the internet, right? Um, so it's like it's a yeah, there's a balance there in the sense that it's the way it is, right? First of all, but there's also a way in which uh, it's not all bad. It's just how we continually engage with it, or don't engage with it, or just consume it and don't do anything with it. That can be problematic. But I don't know. It's just this. It's such a simple thing, but it was this huge kind of realization of like, oh, information. We're talking like there's so much information, and yet do I know that type of do I know that about my own self? Like, can I tell you? Yeah, this self inquiry is very vital to knowing how to excavate, blow the dust off. Really unearth some of the things that are buried within yourself that you haven't maybe always acknowledged or don't know are info. And this is why it matters. It's not just so you can find out woohoo like I did. I found it's because you're literally all everything you do and all the decisions you're making and everything you just habitually do or like reactively do or the things you do by default are coming from that. Like they're coming from that. They're coming from that. all those, all of the repetition or all of the patterns or all of the history. So, when you're wondering like, oh, I wonder why I keep doing this, right? Or I wonder why I keep feeling this, or I wonder why I have such an issue with this. Well, have you done the self-inquiry? Have you start to think through or kind of unearth some of excavate and dig into why that might be the case? So huge, like so important. But takes the courage, right? Can you sit with that? And you know, that's where we get this like altruistic, humble type of posture of it's so funny how easy we can slip into that by running away from ourselves, like from running away from what we need to really face and look at. And we're just doing it in the name of, well, I'm selfless. I'm, and it's so human. It's so human for us to do this. And our kind of like Daniel will talk about, like our maps just continually confirm that. So we just stay within that, so that ultimately that, we can kind of stay safe, right, in that. And it's always this interplay between like, it's interesting because though you might be staying safe and not facing what's uncomfortable, um, you're not actually allowing there to be a safety brought to that which is uncomfortable. Does that make sense? So it's like you're always there's always a bothness at play. We do the same things we've always done because that feels safe and comfortable. But you're also not you're like, the risk is that you're not extending the safety to that which is uncomfortable, and the risk is that it will just pop up, like it just suddenly pops up, and then you're completely taken off guard by that, by yourself, like, oh my gosh, why did I just do that, why did I just say that, or whatever it is, and it's like, maybe we should go ahead and take that safety we keep on to, habitually doing, which is understandable, right? Like, this is our primitive mind, which just desires to be safe and kept safe. um Understandable, but we're having to kind of do this active dynamism, this two-ness, the bothness of safety and uncomfortability, this kind of extending safety to the uncomfortable parts, so that we can kind of, in a sense, sort of reclaim a sense of agency. Otherwise, we will just sort of keep on doing these unconscious stuff, things from our unconscious that we're not really quite aware of. And look, you might become conscious of these things and then still make a choice that you were already making, but now you have an awareness and a consciousness about why you're making that choice. And that is powerful. That is a really powerful thing. Or maybe you'll make radically different choices. But yeah, I guess I'm just speaking about this because, yeah, there is something about this self-inquiry that is so vital, and there's a lot of information where I guess I'm kind of having this remembering or re-realization that the information that's latent in every one of us, around, like, each person around us, is right there for us to really be informed by. Like, that is the thing that can really inform us and that can really help us. Why do you seek out information? It's usually because you want some sort of help with something, but unless you're really doing the work of the self-inquiry, it's really not going to materialize into anything anyway. It won't. So yeah, and it kind of keeps you on that spurious infinity, like they talk about, the Hegelians will talk about, versus this kind of constructive, and yeah, like a good feedback loop, like a feedback loop that's actually informing what you do, what you say, what you think, how you feel about things. And yeah, I think too, with this idea of the pain and healing, hurting, and all of this, um it's huge. It's so huge, and I love the way you described sitting with your, a belly ache, or just sitting with that. It makes me think of this woman. I think her name's Yolandi, but she talks about a lot about this idea of, like, actually bringing attention to the area that's causing pain.
Right.
Um, and that's such foreign it's
Yeah.
such a foreign thing these days. It's such a
Yeah.
foreign thing to think about slowing down and actually putting your hands on the area of your body that's
Mhm.
uncomfortable or really hurting, and just allowing yourself to give it attention
Yeah.
and taking deep breaths. And it's like, this is where I love the word play of, like, patience, right? Or patient, right? Where you're being
Mhm.
patient,
Mhm.
um, and that being like the work of the healing. And it's not for the sake of, like, staying in hurt. It's actually so that you can address that hurt and hopefully again heal and see yourself through to the other side, as you mentioned. And I had this wonderful talk with Aspasia when where we kind of fleshed out this concept of, like, getting a thorn in your foot. but it's so little, you can't barely see it.
Mm.
And you just sort of say, well, oh, well, I can't really see. I'm not going to do the work to dig it out, right? Doing this digging, excavation, self inquiry work. So you just leave it. But then you're like hobbling around. Now your calf hurts because you didn't address the thorn in your foot. Now you've kind of forgotten there was a thorn, but your leg hurts. So now your leg hurts. And it's just a snowballing effect of all these things that happen symptomatically that all came from something, something pierced me or something pricked me or poked me, something, and I didn't really look at what that was. I didn't really take the time to see what that is. And maybe it is something you need to remove, right? Maybe it is something that you need to address or, seal up in yourself. Like this could be, yeah, letting somebody else's values encroach upon yours, and you're not really establishing what are your values for yourself. I don't mean that in like a building walls type of way. It's just simply saying like it can be quite draining if you're not aware, first of all, like what your values are, and then to allow somebody else's values kind of in this unconscious way again to keep tearing down the thing that you're trying to build, right? And then you're like, wow, I don't understand what's like happening. And that's not to disrespect, it's just to say that that person has maybe different values, and their values need to make what they're making so that you can make what you're making and they can make what they're making. And that's the
Yeah.
beautiful thing about it. Otherwise, you just get this constant potential tear down. Nothing's being made, really,
Yeah.
except a mess. you know, and the mess is part of the process of self-inquiry. But yeah, there's productive and mess, and there's not productive mess on the same time. But just
Mhm.
this thought of like not actually taking the time to get to that thorn, take it out, acknowledge that, oh, why did I step on it in the first place? Or where did I step on that? Like there's all these contextual stuff that you could learn in that inquiry and attention that could help you if you don't want to get a thorn in your foot again, right? Or maybe you decide you don't care, and so you'll just do it and you'll just pull it out afterwards. Like you can make those choices, right? And it's like that's but if you don't, suddenly you're having like leg pain, and you don't know, and you're trying to treat leg pain, but that's not even why your leg hurts in the first place. It's not just some spontaneous my leg hurts, like, oh, I'm a victim to this, and I get it. Like it's very difficult, and pain is pain. It's just it's hard, so I understand where that propensity might go toward, like the human propensity to say like, oh, I'm just suffering, right? And I don't know why, sort of thing. But I think that if we do believe that symptoms are like a symphony, they speak to us, they are signals, like you said, the word signal, then taking the time to think about that, assuming the best. I was actually thinking like if we assume the best about our bodies, we won't necessarily just see that as I'm a targeted victim of this thing that happened to me. It's more like, oh, okay, I was walking in that bramble bush, or I was interesting, or oh, okay, I've been avoiding that, and so now my leg hurts, and that's unfortunate. Or um yeah, and so kind of just there's a lot that kind of there's so much information there, there's so much information that one can learn from and then apply, and then be like, oh my gosh, if I just took the thorn out of my foot, I can fully step on my foot now. I don't have to strain and overcompensate my leg, and my leg's feeling better now, etc., 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 and a lot of it is just like mistreatment, because you don't know what you're actually treating. Like you're treating this thing out here, and like you never the fundamental wasn't even looked at. And that's what's so non-rational about all of this, is like, how could it possibly be that doing like doing this work of the self-inquiry, how could that possibly relate to physical healing out here? It can.
Yeah.
How does it happen that a house can fall down when it looks perfectly fine but the foundation was crumbling?
Right.
Of course it can, because it is actually all very, very, very related. So anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Just on that last point, how can these things relate? There's a story that I always go back to in my training in the Feldenkrais method. There was a
Mhm,
particular, teacher who was the expert on anatomy, and so he
mhm,
would give these workshops on anatomy. And when we work with the clients one-on-one, and we're touching the client, that's called functional integration. And so a question came up about working with your client, and your client has neck pain, and he was explaining some
mhm,
things about the anatomy and techniques that we use, and he was talking about this. But he was also someone who had immigrated to the United States from another part of the world, and
mhm,
he paused at one point, he says, the best functional integration session I ever received was when I got my green card.
mhm,
In other words, he was comparing it to the work we do, but he
mhm,
was living with this anxiety about his immigration status. And when that
mhm,
cleared, and
mhm,
he had neck pain, the neck pain just kind of like, I mean, maybe there was still something that he did like directly physically, but like that was that taking away that stress, like took off the stress on his neck, you know. And we could say that that's kind of an external thing because, you know, it's not up to him if he gets the green card or not, but you know, it is up to him if he's diligent in the process and does his part, and then he has to wait. But so there's a lot of places we could go, but I think something that I already hear you talking about, which I'd like to highlight a bit more, and maybe you speak like in the video on creative energy, one of the first things you say is, I'm not only reading the artist's way, I'm reading it aloud.
Yeah.
And my kids come around and I don't necessarily say, hey kids, come on, I'm going to read. You just start reading.
Yeah.
And then they come. But you also spoke about, I think it's in the same video, but you said, you know, there's this thing that you can do is invite your kids to join you in your work. And I think you'd seen a video of a guy, you know, chopping wood, but then all the kids had like toy saws and they were participating. But so building off of the relationship to our kids, as you said, like when we become parents, we just kind of, prepared or not, discover, oh my gosh, I'm in the role of a teacher now.
Yeah, for real.
And there's just no question that whether I feel competent or not, I certainly have way more life experience than this little being who, you know, all kinds of, like, they don't know not to walk into the road, you know, without looking both ways. It is on me to do that. And then all these other things, but with the example of just reading aloud, or your kids are with you in your work, but are you hating the work you do, or are you enjoying it, or are you maybe not loving it, but are you kind of measured in your engagement? Okay, I have this task that has to get done, like the sink is full with dishes. Probably I would rather, you know, be talking to my friends, but how am I going to approach this task? And so the kids are watching, right? And so that's one example, but the even larger category that I feel like you're talking about, I can't remember Luke's last name, but you referred to Luke, who's been on the net and talks about Gurdjieff, and how he talks about energies as you were saying in the video, as a manifestation of spirit. So if, like, I guess this is from Gurdjieff, who's saying that our capacity to allow energy to move through us is a crucial part of being human. And, you know, my capacity to allow energy to move through me not only changes my experience, but it changes the experience of everyone who's around me. Like if the energy comes in and it gets stuck with me, and you're talking to me and I've got this stuck energy, versus you're talking to me and the energy is going through me, your experience is also different. So, and you said a few other things, but, you know, the broad category would be the interpersonal nature of these energies. Just one last thing I could say is that thorn in my foot, you know, like, did I tend to it before I started the Zoom call and talking to you, or am I talking to you having ignored, you know, and I have this leg pain and I'm bringing this stuck energy of the unattended to thorn in my foot as I'm now engaging with you. So anyways, again, just trying to give you a broad frame, but your kind of thoughts or your experience on energy exchange between us, and you know, I think it's vital in today's world. Again, gesturing to the internet and the hikikomori and all these challenges we face together.
Yeah, that was great, Seth, and it's a huge question. I also wanted to bring up really quick that I've been learning a lot, and I think I mentioned it through some of my talks, but there's these women who speak at the Village, it's called the Village Sessions podcast, and they're tremendous. I've been learning a lot from them, and I want to just give them credit in that regard, that I've, like, a lot of these sort of like little insights have come from Corey, Molly, and Michelle, who are at the Village Sessions podcast. Please check out their podcast. It's great. They also have offerings, depending on if you're looking for offerings, you know, they may do, like, they all do a lot of really cool stuff. And I would say that they're definitely interested and very much have developed and cultivated skills and ways of being in the world that can offer things to other women and other people and other families in terms of energy dynamics. Like, the energetics of the family are huge, and this is not something that I really knew about or even
Mm.
heard about. I mean, really, don't think I've ever heard of something like family ecology or energetics of a family until then, really.
Mm.
So I'm grateful for them and I'm grateful for the work that they do. And I think any of their offerings would be valuable to anyone, depending on what maybe one is seeking out, or if they're looking for maybe certain outcomes or certain work in certain areas. They do great work. So please check them out. Um, and there's something to me that is, there's something to me that I do. I mean, I wrestle with the questions daily on the energetics and how that plays out in a family dynamic, because again, I'm with my kids and we're homeschooling, and so um and I'm interested to see the things that help cultivate intrinsic motivation, as Daniel and I talk about, and what things deter that, or what things are seem to kind of come up as like sort of difficult things that you're trying to work through. um and I also, there's a lot of failure that I I feel I do, and I try to learn from every single day. And it's easy to just say, oh, well, I didn't do what I would have ideally liked to have done there, so I've just messed up everything. There's such a fatalistic way we can be as humans, like it's all or nothing. um but I have to kind of remind myself, like, no, like there is a process, and it is still at play, as long as you're willing to learn from that, as long as you're willing to adjust and tweak so that you can do better. You can do, but you want to do better, so you can do better next time. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's so funny because as a mother of young ones, it's like my my day, or like even this morning before our talk, it's so full already. Like I've already, there was crayon that was drawn all over the sofa. So, on one of our small ottomans. So it's like, okay, like how are we dealing with that? Like, okay, whoa, there's crayon in here. Goodness, like did this happen on accident? Was this intentional? Let's figure out how we're gonna clean it up. We were, also instilling kind of a boundary of, we're not going to draw on sofas, but we can draw on other stuff. There's so many things, and I think that yeah, so there's that. There's a conversation about proper attire when it's fall, or going to the library, or like what would be best to wear, and kind of having to like learn how to again play the role of parent, but also these are children that are still learning and have their own wills, and they do, they're still learning. However, there are certain things they know, and they can be held to a certain sense of, this is what we do, or this is like our expectation for our family, or this is our value for our family, right? um so there's that. Then there's, you know and then there's the children feeling like, there's just so many things, especially interplay between children. Oh, they got this, I didn't get that. How do we talk about that? How do we deal with that? And you're already, you're thinking about maybe the fact that I need to make it back on time to have a talk. So there's all this at play, and I really, it's wonderful. It's so fertile. It's such fertile ground for learning. It's such fertile ground for learning, and I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for the fact that we can learn from our own mistakes and demonstrate to our children, hey, when you were doing this, that made me, because I thought about it when you're talking about, like, it takes courage to turn toward somebody being angry at you, right? You know, and this happens a lot. Like, you there's a and it's such a topic that I feel like is, it's really has a lot of potential. I think, for again, all of the things we're talking about, because how we suddenly teach our children, or teach those around us, or anyone, like, how do you teach other human beings? It's so vital and necessary to learn how to do that in a way that doing it well, but also doing it that respects the, as Daniel will talk about, kind of like the meta geometry of life, like this, the fact that the energetics are a real thing, the fact that mirroring is a very real thing, and it's like, how often does one find oneself like, they're yelling, I'm yelling, and it's like, oh no, I don't want to yell. But you're feeling the sense of like, well, that, and sometimes I think there can be a way in which, if you raise your voice, you're saying, how does that feel for you? Do you like being yelled at? No, nobody likes being yelled at. At the same time, there's a way in which you're teaching that, where yelling isn't usually the most um, like that doesn't always yield the best results sometimes, simply because, as I've heard it say, like your message gets lost in your mess. You know, you're trying to say something, but now you're like yelling because you're upset, but you're not really communicating what it is that, you know, is wrong, right? Or what something that maybe you want that you felt was unfair you didn't get, or whatever it is, right? And so I guess what I'm trying to say is that, yeah, there's a way in which you're kind of trying to communicate that yelling isn't always as effective. At the same time, yelling happens sometimes between people. It just does
And,
happen. And so there's kind of this way in which you're trying to not, like, you're just trying to hear what is happening, right? You're slowing down to pay attention to what is happening. And I think that that's a hard thing to do. But it's a necessary thing to do. And I think it's also okay to say it's helpful to recognize that, like, as humans, we all are learning how to slow down. So sometimes if
mm,
you're not slowing down and you do have a reaction that, you know, you're like, I wish I didn't have that reaction. I was like kind of loud, or I was, you know, I wasn't as controlled as I would have liked to have been when I spoke.
mm.
You could also use that as a point of, it's material. It's material to say, hey, why did that maybe happen? And maybe something next time that can be done is this, right? Taking a deep breath, writing something down. Like, there are little practices that you can do and that you can also teach to children, right? That can help them in terms of how they're going to handle like lots of big feelings. The internet says it's unstable, Seth. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, no, there was a slight freeze for a moment, but the audio is just fine. Yeah, yeah. Well, maybe let me just jump in. First of all, I love that as humans, we are all learning to slow down. I just wish that could be repeated,
Yeah.
at every corner. Um, and I also appreciate, and I think to me, this is part
Yeah.
of the
Well, I think there's
key.
a lot, you know, Seth, I'll be honest. Like,
Yeah.
sorry, you're, oh,
No, no, no,
sorry
no
about that.
worries. Maybe we had a little glitch with the sound there too. But
Sorry, go ahead.
I
You
also
just
was
kind of,
really
yeah,
appreciating that you were talking about
yeah.
each moment with your kids as a potential learning opportunity. And that, to me, as I understand it, is where the
Mm-hmm.
key to intrinsic motivation comes. Because even though I might not be
Mm-hmm.
happy seeing crayon all over the couch, if rather than seeing a problem that, I want to make go away, it's like, wow, you modeled that curiosity. How did that happen? Did we think that
Yeah.
was
How
okay?
did we?
But then you're already
Exactly.
in this inquiry. It's not that you don't want to also,
Mm-hmm.
like, we're going to have to clean this up now, but then it sounded like you cleaned it up together, or maybe you put the kids to cleaning it up. But
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did.
in other words, each moment, even the sort of mishaps or the missteps, they become these learning
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
opportunities, as opposed to kind of like the, oh shit, now we've
absolutely.
got to clean this up and blah blah blah. So yeah, I
Yeah,
call that anytime,
yeah.
anywhere awareness, which I think is another sort of reframe from the typical self-care, which is often like the morning routine. I do this at the beginning of the day and then I go through
Mm-hmm.
my day, as opposed to like, no, actually the whole day is an opportunity, you know,
Yeah,
for
yeah.
we never know what's going to happen, but stuff's going to happen all day long. That is an opportunity for me to learn more about
Mm-hmm.
myself, to learn more about my family, opportunities to teach or to learn from
Mm-hmm.
each other. It's
Mm-hmm.
constantly available. And I mean, of course that's sometimes tiring, and that's where, again, kindness might tell me I need a break, I need to go take a nap, I need to,
Mm-hmm.
delegate someone else to deal with something. But if we can maintain our energy, um, those experiences,
Mm-hmm.
like the crayons on the couch, could actually give me energy as opposed to drain energy, if I'm sort of opening to the experience as this potential learning opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's so good. Yeah, that's tremendous. You're a little freezy, Seth, but can you hear me? If
Okay.
you can still hear me, then hopefully it's okay.
Hopefully I came through, but now I'm reminded of the part of your video where you say, is the glitch on Zoom, or
Oh
or
yeah.
or am I glitching?
Exactly. Absolutely. Yes. Yes. Thank you so much for paying such kind attention to it to remember that from the video. I do recall that. Absolutely. Yeah. I think we might be back now, so that's good. I did hear everything you say too, so that's great
Perfect.
too. And actually, that's such a great like learning thing that from your work where you talk about like this idea of it being like from moment to moment, where we don't just think of it as like, oh, we're gonna do this practice and it has really nothing to do with how we like live the rest of our day. It's like, no, like every single moment, every breath is an opportunity to incorporate and integrate what we are learning and what we want, how we want to sort of to use a term the ladies use, I said the Village Sessions podcast, to recalibrate, and I think that yeah, something that maybe mothers of young children who are with them, like there is a you have to kind of level up on your patience in terms of um, you know, what you're going to have to sort of like encounter, but also even that, like there's a part of me that almost wonders like kids, I mean, it's sort of like they're learning, kids are learning so much all the time, and it's not always, it's something that like everybody in a sense has to be, is going to have to be patient. And thinking about it as just like, oh, you're just going to have to be really, really patient. It's more like, how can we be the patience, right? How can we be the patience in the process of our own like healing and our own work so that it's, it's not this sense of like, because none of us will do this perfectly. Like I said, sometimes, it's an unfortunate thing, but sometimes you may not react the way you wanted to, and you're like, wait a second, I'm supposed to be modeling how to respond well and in how to respond in a calm way. And I'm not being crazy, but I'm not being calm like I would like to be, um,
Yeah.
and so it's kind of like, and I think of calm not in a, because I think sometimes there can be a way in which it's like, oh, calm, and that's all like, it's kind of thought of as just a feminine energy, but I'm thinking about it more as a control energy, like a masculine type of control where you can handle anything. Like you can handle somebody yelling at you or your child even. Like I'm not, and I think sometimes what can be, and I feel it, where there can be this sense of like, well, there's level of respect, right, that you're teaching with young children. But if you kind of have it in your head of like, if you don't assume the best about them, then you can kind of assume that they're just transgressing just because they, I don't know, just because they want to, or they know better, they're not doing better and stuff like that. And a lot of times it's more just like they feel a lot of stuff right now, and it's just pressure cooking out of them because they're feeling so many things about the situation at hand, whatever it is. And so sometimes under like again remaining calm in that, taking deep breaths, modeling that for them so they can mirror that to say, let's take some deep breaths before we talk about anything, before we get into it, before we figure out what's going on here, let's take a deep breath. And like, it's so crazy how much effort, in a sense, effort you have to put into doing that, but how recharging that can be. Like you're saying, these experiences of like, do you leave that feeling drained or not? A lot of it to me, I think, has to do with how much you're going to be willing to put into that at the on front of slowing down, which is again so counterintuitive. Like, it's taking effort to not do or react or whatever. You're having to just sort of slow down and not say anything, not do anything, not because, and then not, and fight your own internal battles of like, well, if I, the moralization of certain things of like, well, you got to just set it straight and blah blah blah. It's like, yes, you're eventually going to, this is a teaching moment. Of course it is. Of course you're going to like illuminate what is maybe a proper thing to do or not. But how are you doing it? Like, are you doing it in such a way that actually attends to the matter at hand and presents a model of control? If you're wanting to have to sort of demonstrate self-control, for example,
Mhm.
are you having self-control? So yeah, and in the moments where you don't, there can be in the sense of like maybe you um, didn't take the deep breath, right? And you just started talking about the thing, or even that, it's like you, and you're trying to just deal with it, but you're like, wait, let me just take a deep breath. If you don't, you can say like, wow, when I didn't take a deep breath before that, I was not able to get to the heart of the issue as swiftly as I could have, or I didn't do it as effectively as I could have. So that's a great lesson. Like you can talk about it in those terms, I believe, even with younger people and children, because then they're like, oh, right, when I take a deep breath, that actually helps me to think more clearly and to communicate more clearly. And that seems to be the case too for mom, right? Or for dad or whoever it is. And so, yeah, but I do think that sometimes we get it mixed up on our head about like, well, that's just not, again, you have to sort of get down to what you actually believe about what you want to be doing. Like, how do you want to be teaching? And first of all, are you teaching somebody? Cool, great, you are. How do you believe that teaching is most effective? Because why would you be teaching if you were trying to do it so it wasn't effective? Of course you want it to be effective, right? But what actually makes it effective? And there's also just being avoidant and not trying to correct anything. And that's, then you never actually step up into your role as a teacher. So that, again, that wouldn't be right. Where you're just, oh, never mind. Oh, well, I won't address that. I just will let it, let it go. And it's like, no, but what you're really trying to do is kind of get back to your space of like, okay, let's present and model this so that we can learn how to effectively deal with conflict, which just comes up in life. It just comes up in life, right? You just step on a thorn. Somebody's upset about that. This happening here. How can we do that in such a way that we can actually effectively learn so that next time that may arise again, we have more tools. We have better tools for knowing how to handle that. So anyways, I don't know if this directly relates to the question of energetics, but it does make me think about how important your own energy you're bringing to the thing matters, right? Is a totally different energy about like seeing the crown as like a total nuisance and a total like intentional infringement, da da da. That's going to be a totally different energy than being like, oh, what happened here? What happened? Oh, like
Right.
let's
Right.
let's
Well,
let's
and
slow down first of all, like you said, and then let's solve the problem, and then let's realize we don't want, we aren't going to do this again because we don't draw crayons on sofas, but we draw it on magazines or on whatever it is, papers or on our notebooks, yeah.
yeah, so there's two things, and there's one question I've been wanting to ask you, and we're getting closer to the end of our time, so I want to make sure to bring it.
Yeah.
But one of the things I just want to observe in everything you're explaining here is, like, we keep using anecdotes, like suppose this happens, suppose that happens. But what
Yeah.
also kind of comes through is that there really is no blueprint. There really is no,
Mm, yeah,
we're actually encountering the unknown constantly.
absolutely.
But I think what I'm hearing you say, if we go back to earlier in our conversation, and again, I'll just use this language, even if I invite people to interpret it in the way that would work for them. But if I
Hmm.
talk about a relation to God,
Hmm.
even if my right relation to what I call God is different than what you
Hmm.
would say is your relationship to, maybe you give it another name, if I'm in that right relation and dealing with the kids and the crayons and the
Yeah.
sofa versus if I'm not, I
Hmm.
mean, which isn't even to
100%.
say that necessarily like the specific things you mentioned of how you dealt with that situation, but I can be doing something that's either from a sense of compulsion or really a sense of like I sometimes think of listening, like even right now speaking,
Mm-hmm.
as listening. Like I'm listening to which words want to come out of my mouth, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to choosing my words and
Mm-hmm.
doing the talking in that way. Um, so because at a certain point, if I try to literally map out all of the intricacies of the moment and deal with each
Mm-hmm.
one of them, it becomes impossible. So I think
Yeah.
intuition uh,
Mm,
becomes necessary at a certain point, almost on
mm,
a practical level. But I think that intuition is the strongest and the clearest when I'm in right relation to myself, when I'm in
yeah.
right relation to something larger. So I wanted to say that, but here's my question, which
Yes,
I
yes.
feel I think this could be a fun way to wrap it up.
Okay.
And please respond to any of the other things that I just said. But it strikes me that in these 4 videos you made, which I mentioned in the beginning, and again, I'll link them to our video.
Thanks, Seth.
Um, everything that we've talked about here, this is a little too simple, but one thing we could say is it all came out of wordplay.
Mm-hmm.
Like you
Mm-hmm.
thought about being
Yeah.
online on the internet, and you're like, wait a minute, what about being online? You
Mm-hmm.
talk about a glitch in a Zoom call, but wait, what about, is there a glitch with me? Or you're talking about
Mm-hmm.
patience versus I'm a
Mm-hmm.
patient who needs. So,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
but it seems to me that wordplay can take me in a surprising new direction.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if I
Yes.
only think that this word in this context means one thing, I think you and Daniel both love to do this, but um, so I just kind of wanted
Yeah.
to underline that it seems that a lot of our conversation today, we could say, this is a result of you engaging wordplay in a way
Yeah.
that was delightful to me and drew me in. So um, along with anything else you'd like to say, any final thoughts on our conversation, I'd really love to just get you to say something about wordplay.
Uh, Thank you, Seth. That's very kind of you, and I appreciate you welcoming any sort of diatribes I've been on this
Oh, it's been
conversation on
fantastic.
whatever it is. So thank you so much, Seth. It's been a delight, and I hope we can speak again sometime
Yeah,
soon.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, for me, wordplay is. It's funny you asked me this because I remember I was like going to record something to my friend about wordplay, and then I don't know. I think I was just like. I I do this. I'll just admit. I'll admit to the audience. I do this where I'm like, nobody cares, and I just like turn it off. I'm like, no, nobody cares. I'm turning this off. I'm not sending this, and it's hilarious. It's very telling about myself, where I'm like, I'm not going to talk about this anymore. But actually, I do think it's interesting, and I wish I had maybe sent it to my friend. Maybe he would have thought it was interesting too. Maybe not. But point matter is, to me, wordplay is so powerful because it makes us have to rethink things, like you already kind of mentioned. It makes us have to rethink things that we thought we knew, we thought we understood. It puts things in connection with each other that we would have never really thought to put into connection with each other. And to me, that's like the power of wordplay is that it makes us realize, whoa, there's something that actually like I don't know. There's something about words and there's something about wordplay that allows us to, well, do the one of your four postures of learning, right? Where we get playful with it. But we also get like we kind of realize that words have these, you know, they are very revealing about something that's happening already. They're like these kind of little litmus tests about something that's happening. Like words are so much more powerful than, we may realize. And I think we know that, like we know that words matter, we know that words are powerful. But I think wordplay really brings into focus how much we can learn from slowing down to, for example, this relates to the symptomology, right? Where you slow down with the thing, right? Mentioned to you, and I don't know if we did it in the recorded segment, but I did this recording on scrolling.
Hmm.
So for me, it was interesting to sit with something that we usually think of as problematic. Oh, I just like wasted 2 hours scrolling, right? Or we'd say like, oh, people are just like all they're doing is scrolling all day long on their phone, blah blah blah. But this thing that we think is a problematic or symptomatic, why is that symptomatic? What does it mean to why do people tend to scroll? Is there something psychosomatic? Is there something like psychically connected or physically connected to our action of scrolling? What, like getting really, really, really curious about the wordplay between scrolling or a scroll and, like I bring up in the talk, that talk I did, which I think you can find on Spotify. OG Rose is also on Spotify. Um, but if you think about scrolls in ancient text and there's the way they would be scrolling or scrolled out, like there's a lot of right potential for thinking about, oh, maybe that's why we tend to do this as humans, and maybe this could actually lead me to engage with things in a different way. Because I did that recording that day, I did it because I was scrolling incessantly through Instagram, basically hoping like, and I got to this point where I was just mad at myself. I was just frustrated. I was like, what do I think I'm gonna find on here? Like, what do I think I'm gonna do? Like, find the answer to all of life's questions? Like, am I gonna find joy incarnate by scrolling on Instagram? I mean, I was so irritated with myself that like I was doing this. I hated that I was doing this. Um, and it was yeah, discouraging to say the least. And but I did feel like, wait, I feel like I'm doing this action to like find something, find something through all of this. And so I went and I was like, I'm gonna go put my frustration into a recording, and try to make something out of this. And that really was very, very helpful for me. Like that's what I do find art is. It's quite cathartic in that regard. Where I mean, I don't know if you can call it art. It's just a recording on scrolling, but you get what I'm saying. When you make something, and it really helped me like shed light on more of this sort of habitual thing that we tend to sort of fall into as humans, and maybe why we do that, and maybe what could be the cure or like the answer for that. Um, and it all came from just thinking about the connection between the word scroll and scroll,
Mhm.
scrolling on a phone and scrolling through an ancient text. And so, yeah, and it's fun. It's also just fun. I just enjoy it. Like, it's just fun for me. I enjoy it so much. And I know there's some people who maybe think it's like a lesser form of, intellectual pursuit or something like that. I don't know, whatever it is, I enjoy it. And maybe it is, but I think that's actually humbling about it. Like it's a humbling thing where we can get almost childlike with words and re-see them again, see them in a new light, see them in a new way. and let our kind of functional fixedness with words kind of fall to the side or fall away, and like let our guard down regarding words and what they mean. But that can feel scary because like we know what words mean, and we know this means that, we know this means that, and all of our kind of way of education and learning that kind of typically gets done is like, do you know the meaning of this word? Never mind the fact that we literally all have our own nuanced meanings of every single word, even the word love. That means something for you in a way that it might mean something different for me. Or there might be a lot of crossover. There might, but it literally, like, these things have different meanings, and that's a huge, powerful realization, because I think, yeah, it can relate to miscommunication too. Why are people miscommunicating? Oh, whoa, literally, we're using the same words with completely different meanings. Um, so that's powerful, and can actually help you. It can really help us. But yeah, for me, like, wordplay is charming. It's like I said, it's just fun. It's like experimenting. I feel like a little scientist, like, just playing around with things, or tinkering in the sandbox, or playing with Play-Doh or whatever. It's just, there's something about it that feels like you give yourself permission to think about things in a different way, in a new way, and undo some of the things you've already have associated with it, so that you can make further connections. It's a lot about actually making more connections and realizing the greater interconnectedness between things. Like, what does scrolling mindlessly on Instagram have to do with, um, again, like, our desire for the divine, even, or the source, or like something bigger than ourselves? Um, and what is the comparison of the infinite of the web relate to the infinity of, like, an infinite being, right? The source of life, potentially, if you view it that way. So yeah, it's, to me, it's quite illuminating, and doing like wordplay. And I do find, like, a lot of my poetry that sometimes I put on Instagram, I don't do it in like a formal capacity, but it does often like revolve around wordplay because of how much I enjoy it and find it to be fruitful. um but like, even with, sorry, not to harp on it, but the scrolling idea is like, um instead of just sort of like, you I think you also, if you aren't, if the ability to play with words as, can help you, actually, it can actually equip you to relate to yourself in a different way. It's kind of like a self inquiry, but like with words, because then you can start to, instead of just kind of hate yourself for scrolling all the time, you start to be like, and yet that never helps you, that hatred of yourself doing that never helps you stop doing it. Okay, well, you're trying to put, my son Haven was telling me, somebody, he quoted somebody, he's like, it was brilliant what he was saying, because I was saying, like, if at first you don't succeed, try again. We were kind of talking about that concept, and then he's like, I think it was Einstein, somebody said that, like, isn't the definition of insanity is doing the same thing the same way and expecting a different result? And so I was like, but what about that? Like, it was so brilliant. He's like, that's a great line. There's also this line. What do you think about that? And it was a brilliant conversation we had from that. It was wonderful. But see, like, it there's so much nuance in life. It's so beautiful,
Yeah.
and it's and
Yeah.
it's and it's fun, and it's playful, and it's difficult sometimes, but it's also very, very fertile. It's fertile ground, and words are just like that too. And so, yeah, for me, it can actually, like, instead of, again, that self hatred with scrolling, when you do wordplay or some sort of creative act related to it, you actually empower yourself to know, oh, that's why I'm doing that, and I'm actually seeking this thing that I'm never going to get there, so I'm going to stop doing that, and I'm going to do this instead. Wow. So there's a lot of potential there, a lot of real potential, and power for actionable stuff you can do differently and feel better in your body and in yourself and in your day. So I'm all about that.
Beautiful. Well, I'm so glad I asked that question. I love
Yeah.
the sort of alchemy of one moment I'm scrolling, then I'm mad at myself, but then I get curious, and it's
Yeah.
like, is the seeking energy, the ancient
Yes.
scrolls, it kind of widens the whole context.
Mm.
And I still maybe think I don't want to scroll on the internet all day, but I'm aware that there's even something I'm doing in maybe
Mm.
this, you know, distorted way that is
Mm.
connected to something that is really beautiful that's in me.
Yes.
And now I'm,
Exactly.
and then if you go talk to your kids right after, as opposed to just having the, oh, I hate myself for scrolling, and then going, right, like
Yeah.
the energy you're carrying on. So,
And I'll say really quick, like, I did that recording several years ago, and maybe I can send it to you if you're interested. No pressure
please,
to
yeah,
listen to it, but I have changed habitually dramatically because of that, and because of other realizations. But that was a catalyst in me many years
right.
down the line. Like, I mean, I'm not saying I'm perfect about it, but I don't do what I used to do and have that kind of repetitious, enclosed self-hatred sort of situation with scrolling like I used
Right.
to, all because of that. So it's cool. It's
Yeah.
very real.
Well, if we have a sort of a normal day, let's say, where we just go about our routine, but one thing like that happens, and the highlight of the day is
Mm,
that something big happened, but there was a big insight. I
mm,
feel like that insight can stick in the memory. That's what I'm hearing from you. It's like now there's maybe even a way where every time you scroll, there's just an association with ancient scrolls, and that,
absolutely.
so it provides
Yeah.
that reorientation.
Yes, absolutely.
And I also thought of earlier when you said, you didn't get here out of nowhere. There were
Yeah.
people who came from before you. Well, we could say that about language, right? Like the English
Mm-hmm.
language was here when I
Mm-hmm.
was born. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it has this long history, and now these words that I hear or that I speak, they're more than what I know. And so wordplay could be a way
Mm-hmm.
into that. Anyway, before we wrap up, I just want to say that when you were telling that story, I really just had this embodied feeling of like a cup that's overflowing. And that sense of we can be that way with life. Like
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we actually can't do inquiry on every interesting thing. There's too much, but it's kind of
Mm-hmm.
like this beautiful abundance,
Yes, yes.
potentially.
Mm-hmm.
And that really was. I told one of my friends after I went to Lynchburg and visited you all. I said, I wish I grew up in that family
Oh,
because I
that's so
really,
kind.
yeah. Well, it was a spontaneous thought though, because I really
Mhm.
think apart from all the like particular things that I've learned from you and Daniel, it was just all there in the energy of the
Mm.
household and how you are together and with your kids and how you were with me and the experience of, going to the store with Daniel and seeing the wedding venue. There was a kind of a seamlessness, and I think it
Mm.
was this just ever-present curiosity and,
Mm.
enjoyment of inquiry. So
Mm.
thanks for overflowing here on
Thank
the
you.
Embodied Dialogue podcast.
Yay.
Any last words you wanna share, and then we'll wrap
Oh,
up.
well, thank you, Seth. It's been an honor to be here with you, and I really appreciate you taking the time to say, "Hey, would you like to come and talk on my podcast and your YouTube channel?" And yeah, I really really appreciate the work that you're doing, and it's really like helped me. Like your work has been a catalyst for me to get kind of more in touch with the realities of embodiment and what that really actually means. So I want to thank you for that so much, and I so enjoyed having you at our home. That's such an incredible thing for you to say. And yeah, I appreciate it deeply. And yeah, I'm grateful for you, Seth. It's awesome to have you in the spaces of like the online arena because I feel like you bring a calm and a sanity that is so appreciated and necessary and needed. So thank you for you and thank you for what you do.
Uh, it's a real pleasure to be in the community with you. So yeah, thanks, and let's definitely do it again.
Awesome. Let's do it. Thanks, Seth.
Okay.
Bye.